This is the Digital Savage Experience Podcast, hosted by Prokopchuk, bringing you all things digital marketing, tech, business, and motivation. What's stopping you from becoming relentless in all aspects of life? Are you ready to become a digital savage? Let's get into today's episode.
Hey everyone, this is Prokopchuk, and this is the Digital Savage Experience Podcast. Today I have with me Veena Jetti, who is the founding partner at Enzo Multifamily and has over 10 years of real estate experience, including overseeing the management of over $1 billion in real estate assets. Her experience includes driving corporate growth strategy, asset management, and business development derived from working for multiple Fortune 500 companies. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, awesome. It's great to have you. So what's kind of been your journey? Where did you start it and how did you kind of end up founding this company and some of the things you've done along the way?
Yeah, so I think it was actually kind of accidental that I ended up founding this company, but I'm really glad I ended up here. So I actually come from a real estate family. So my parents have been investing in real estate for decades now. So kind of natural for me to end up in real estate. You know, I went to college, graduated, went into corporate America, learned on someone else's dime, and then eventually realized that I could do what I was doing for someone else, for my family and myself. And so that's when I kind of left corporate America, started investing into actually single family homes, and discovered early on that that is not a very scalable model, and decided to kind of move into the commercial multifamily space. And that's when I met my co-founding partner, Sapin Talati, and we started Enzo Multifamily together, basically because we both had the same vision. We had both kind of gotten to the top of our capacity in single family homes. And so that's how Enzo Multifamily was essentially born.
No, that's awesome. And I think if someone's trying to get into real estate commercial, how do they go about it? How do you kind of evaluate a property? What is kind of the process you go through? Yeah,
so I always get asked that question, and because it's daunting, right? To go from buying a single family home that might be, $100,000, $200,000 to buying a multifamily complex, which is, 100 units and $15 million. So, what I always remind investors, it's so counterintuitive, but the bigger the deal, it's actually easier to do because the banks start to rely more on the deal itself as a business versus your personal balance sheet and your personal credit. So it's super counterintuitive. But so what I would say is if you want to get started in commercial, I think the best way to go about it is to find someone who's experienced, find someone who is doing what you want to be doing, and try to add value to their process. We have a lot of investors or new students who will approach us saying, hey, I really want to do what you're doing. I don't know where to start. So we'll invite them onto property tours with us or our conference calls with us so that they can have an opportunity to really understand and see how we look at deals, and then take what they like from our model and get rid of what they don't.
No, that's great. I mean, I'm actually personally would like to get into it at some point on the, like you said, 100 units. Like that's my kind of goal in the next 5 years to possibly do something like that.
Yeah, so I think 100 units is like the minimum that someone should actually start with. At Enzo, we prefer 200 units and up, but I think 100 is a good baseline. And one of the reasons for that, like I said, counterintuitive, but one of the reasons for that is because you can actually justify the cost of on-site property management. So you're no longer buying yourself a job where you're answering every tenant phone call about, my hot water is out, my toilet's leaking, my doorbell won't work. You're no longer answering those calls because at 100 units, I have a property manager that sits in an office Monday through Friday. I have a porter who's on site who goes and makes those calls. So I don't have to worry about those little nuances of owning that real estate.
Yeah, I was going to say that I think the only way I would do it is when I have like a management company or something set up where, I still have my other endeavors, and it's not necessarily, getting the phone calls directly from tenants, because I'm sure that would boggle down anybody.
Yep, that's not a fun phone call to get. And, it doesn't stop just because it's weekends or Christmas or Thanksgiving. You still get those calls when you are the only point of contact. So for me, having third-party management is crucial to any deal we do.
And obviously, you're building the company. And I don't think a lot of people look at that real estate investment where it's like a rental property as well as the asset value as well. So I think that's kind of the beauty of real estate also in terms of an investment.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think one of the things that I like about it is, number one, it's like one of the best tax advantaged investments that you have access to in the market. And secondly, it is also a asset-backed investment, right? So when you invest into the stock market, for example, your stock can go from $100 to $0 overnight. We don't see that kind of volatility in real estate because the odds of a building going from, $15 million or $100 million valuation to zero overnight is highly unlikely. I mean, I guess it's not impossible, but highly unlikely. And so for me, that's why I like real estate. Also, it's passive cash flow for us. I value passive cash flow way more than I value active income. So, just being invested, collecting what we call mailbox money is a very attractive lifestyle for us.
No, I agree. I think the goal, at least for myself, is, getting to a place where they say where you're sleeping and you're making money. And you're obviously, when your time is not connected to making the money, then, you have the possibility to scale like with real estate.
Exactly. And that's exactly it, right? When you're no longer trading time for dollars, it's infinitely scalable. So I can own 1,000 doors or 1,000,000 doors, and it doesn't matter because the rent is still earned the same way. So it doesn't require any more of my time to own 1,000,000 doors versus, I'm using extremes, but versus 1,000 doors.
No, I agree. And for somebody that's trying to get into commercial real estate investment, obviously it helps to have a background to begin with. But if it's, a new person or a beginner, what are some tips, like things to look at or, what to know before getting into it? Because I'm sure it's overwhelming and it's possibly easy to make a bad deal where, you kind of fall through on the deal itself.
Yeah, so in real estate in general, as like a broad category, I always like to tell investors to focus, like stay laser focused. Don't be somebody that looks at 10 different types of real estate investments, because there are a lot of ways to make money in real estate, right? Like you can buy single family homes, you can buy tax liens, you can be a hard money lender, you can do multifamily, you can do commercial. There's 100 different ways to make money. And there's always going to be people that are successful in those areas. But as an investor, or as somebody going into the market, it is not possible for you to know every single aspect of every single one of those slices of the pie the way you really need to in order to be successful. So pick one, maybe two. So maybe you say, I want to look at middle size multifamily, 100 to 200 units in these three markets. And I want to also look at self-storage in these three markets. And you can really dive into those areas and understand and know the market really well. If you're passively investing with a syndicator, which is what Enzo does, I always like to vet the syndicators. So the first question I always ask anybody that I invest with passively is, are the sponsors putting money into the deal themselves? For us, if I'm asking for somebody to trust me with their hard-earned money, and I'm saying, oh, but I'm not putting my own money in, well, that should be kind of a question mark for you. Why is this deal not good enough for you, but it's good enough for you to put in front of an investor? So we always invest from the sponsor team. We always put money in right alongside our investors, and our money goes at risk first, actually, before our investors even see our offering. We already have money into the deal. So that's the first question I like to ask. The second question I like to ask is about how they're looking at the deal. So I like to understand the modeling, and you want to understand why they're looking at the deal a certain way, and does it make sense, right? So are they going to go from $1,000 in rent a month to $5,000 of rent in a month in 3 months. That's completely unrealistic in 99.9999% of cases. So, I like to know and understand the business plan. I like to know and understand who the team is that is going to be managing the asset. Projected returns, they're all projected. None of them are guaranteed. So, you have to kind of go in with the knowledge that, okay, maybe this is going to be somewhere around here and maybe it's not. It's like any other investment. And then the third thing is I typically like to ask sponsors how the debt is structured. So, as we're going into a softening of the market, which we are, I believe right now we're either at the top or just starting to come down from the top of the market. I like to find out about the debt structure and why that particular debt was taken on. So right now, Enzo's becoming much more conservative than we have been even in the past few years to adjust for what we perceive to be a softened market. So, for example, now we're not really taking on bridge products unless there's a very compelling reason for it, which there has not been this year, but there could be in the future. But we just try to be very careful and very deliberate in what we're willing to do.
That's really interesting. Yeah, I was going to ask a follow-up question where you see the market heading, but you sort of answered that already.
Yeah, I see the market softening. So for us, I'm really excited about it because that means that we can pick up a lot more assets at lower pricing. So Enzo focuses on 3 different markets, really. So we focus on DFW because that's our backyard. We have, several assets here. But this year and in the coming year, we're actually focusing more in the Florida markets. Orlando, Tampa, Jacksonville are kind of the 3 targets for next.
That's interesting. I'm in kind of the metro New York,
Yeah.
New Jersey area.
Yeah, so New York, New Jersey, we don't really play in those markets because they're very expensive markets to play in, so they don't necessarily fit our model. We definitely have colleagues that do very well in that area. Right now, everybody's doing well. If you're losing money in real estate, you're really trying hard to lose that money. But in the coming years, as cap rates start moving, as investors start getting tighter with their money, I think we're going to just see a lot more assets that are more opportunistic for us to be able to come in, kind of get those at more attractive pricing.
No, yeah, that's interesting because I think there's a lot of people out there that want to get into real estate investment or like certain aspects or components of the process, but are intimidated rather on the commercial side or the residential side. So it's really interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do think that I think right now when people are saying they're not finding deals that work, I think that you're absolutely correct. It's because you're looking at the deal correctly. Right now we're saying that for every 200 deals that we're looking at, we're maybe seeing 1 deal. And that's even being pretty generous with how many deals we're seeing. So it's better to not be in a bad deal than it is to just be in a deal to have a deal done.
No, I agree with that. Now, in terms of like the vetting process, how long does that typically take? Because you said 200 and then obviously that may yield 1 deal. What is kind of the process that goes into that?
Yeah, so I have a whole big team and everybody puts an effort into all aspects of the business. So I have 3 other partners. So my founding partner or co-founding partner is Stephen Pilati. He's the one that does a lot of our financial modeling and in-house underwriting. So he'll oversee our financial team, our financial analysts, and make sure that the deal is being modeled correctly. He'll structure the debt. He'll adjust the P12s. He'll adjust all of the formulas and put out our pro forma. He will look at, like I said, about 200 deals. Now, the deals come from either his contacts or my contacts, or we have 2 other partners, Neil Dandona and Pooja Jwadi, and both of them actually come in post-target. So the upfront work is really done the majority by Stephen, and then I kind of assist. We kind of bounce ideas off of each other. Once we see a deal where we're like, okay, this meets the initial criteria for Enzo investing, then we'll take it to the whole team. We'll discuss the business plan. We'll discuss the opportunity. We send partners out to walk the property. So we'll have eyes on the asset. Enzo's model is a little bit different than some other syndicator models, but our model is to do about 90 to 95% of our due diligence out of the gate. So before we even put an offer in, we have very good ideas about what is possible on the asset, what the rehab numbers are, where the areas of opportunity are, what our competitors are doing. And we spent a lot of time delving really deep into that asset once we've identified it as a potential target. Even at that point, even after we've expended dollars and time and energy, we still are willing to walk away from an asset if it doesn't work for us. So then we go into our initial round. So typically the way an on-market deal works in multifamily is you go into an initial round of bidding where you submit your first offer. So you say, okay, I'm going to pay you $10 for 123 Main Street. Here are the general terms. We submit what's called an LOI. And then from the LOI stage, the seller will typically choose anywhere from 3 to 5 of the best offers. So once those 3 to 5 are chosen, they'll invite you into what's called a best and final round. That typically will be, you have a buyer interview. So we'll get on the call with the seller and the broker. We'll do an interview. They'll vet us. They'll make sure we can close and we're not just, here to waste time. They ask us about our experience and our background and how we slice the deal, what we like about it, what we don't like about it. And essentially they're kind of testing us to see how prepared we are and, how fluent we are in this area. And then in the best and final round, we will submit an offer that is our best and final offer. And so typically we'll come up or we'll change the terms. Maybe we'll put more hard money day one. Maybe we'll lessen the inspection period, whatever the terms are, that we come in with our best and final terms. And then they'll typically select a buyer once your best and final is submitted and you have that interview. They'll select a buyer. And then we go to what's called the PSA stage, which is the purchase agreement. So that's when we start involving attorneys and, all that good stuff. So there's a process that kind of rinse and repeats, but it can take anywhere from the time we see a deal to the time we close a deal is typically anywhere from 2 months on the very, very short end, but more realistically 3 to 4 months.
No, that's very interesting, and that's a smart way, obviously, to go into it because you try to minimize as much risk, on the front end as possible.
Exactly.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So, on a personal question, what's one thing that you've had as a thing that you may have struggled with in the past that you turned into a strength that you utilize now?
Oh man, that is a good question. So one of the weaknesses that I personally face and have always struggled with is maintaining organization just internally. So my email inbox right now probably has about 18,241 unread emails. So I'm not very good at organizing my emails or kind of setting up processes that kind of help with that management. One of the things that we've recently done is we've brought team members on board. My partner Pooja is awesome at setting up processes and systems for us. So for me, I think the biggest strength that I have now is that I have chosen partners and I've chosen people to work with on my team who have strengths that I just simply don't have, no matter how hard I try. And they just really complement us and complement me. And so it allows me to not have to focus on things I don't enjoy as much, but it lets me really shine where I'm good. So it's still a weakness of mine, but I'm able to kind of mitigate some of the weakness because my partner is so strong in it that I kind of follow her lead and allow her to kind of dictate and, put these processes and systems into place that work really well. And it makes a whole lot of sense why she does them. So I think that's kind of where I've kind of turned it into a strength, so to speak.
No, I think that's important because you can't be everywhere and do everything. I mean, you're going to be good at what you're good at, and finding the right people that fill kind of those gaps that you may have weaknesses is important for any business owner or entrepreneur.
Yep, totally agree. I always joke that the secret to my success is actually I just find people that are way smarter than me, and then I partner with them and ride their coattails to success.
Yeah, I mean, that should be kind of the hiring practice nowadays, but a lot of the time in corporate structures, it's people get afraid that their job's in jeopardy if they hire somebody smarter than them, that kind of thing. But I think the benefit and the beauty of, being your own boss is having that opportunity to do so.
Yep, no, absolutely agree.
So what's one piece of advice you can leave with the audience, either personal or professional or both?
So I think that, one of the focuses that the Enzo team as a whole has been trying to kind of get to for end of 2018 and for 2019 is why do we do what we do, right? And for all of us, we'll all tell you basically the same answer. We do it because we want the lifestyle with our families. We want time with our families. We don't want to be, tied to a job from 9 to 5 for the rest of our lives. And so one of the things we've been really bad at previously that we are now focusing on this year and going forward is that work-life balance. Because when you work for yourself, it's really difficult to step away from work when there's all these tasks that need to be done. So sometimes we'll end up working at like 2 a.m. or 11 at night or on a weekend. And so now what we've started doing is we're trying to take what's called like an Enzo Friday, where at noon in our local time zone, we turn on our auto responder and, noon to 5, no meetings can be scheduled. We take Friday afternoons off. I suspect most of us continue working through that, but it sets the expectation externally that, hey, Enzo partners are available only if it's really urgent. Otherwise, it's got to wait till Monday. And I think that is starting to kind of help add more balance to our lives, because we are all so dedicated and we all know how important this is to all of us. So I think, personally and professionally, maintaining that balance, or at least trying to be cognizant of it, is really important to avoid burnout. And also because you have to really love what you do to work at this level of intensity for so long.
I agree. And you made a good point about burnout, because kind of the stereotype in America, everybody has to work, 24/7 to succeed. And eventually, if you don't, love or at least like what you do and have a time to recharge your mind and your body once in a while, you're going to, end up hating it.
No, and that's exactly right. And so, we take vacations. We, when we're on vacation, the other partners will cover for us. My partner's going to Italy next week. Last year I went to Paris for a week. So, we get that balance, and it's really important to maintain that, because you have to remember your why. Why do you do this?
Yeah, the mission is, I think, the foundation of everything you do kind of professionally. So I definitely agree with that.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate you coming on today, and thank you for your time. Can you tell the audience how they can find you or anything else you have going on?
Yeah, so you can find us, we have our website, enzomultifamily.com, E and like Nancy, Z like zebra, O like Oscar, multifamily.com. There is a form there. If you just click the retire in luxury button, it'll take you to ask you for all your contact information. You can schedule a call with myself or one of my partners. You can get onto our newsletter list. We send out a newsletter once a month, and really it's 4 different articles typically that get curated. And it's really only the most important things that we feel like investors really need to know about what's happening. So, we don't send a daily email or anything crazy like that, but you can get an opportunity to read about what's happening in multifamily, why we like certain markets, shifts that we're seeing. So we'll curate content pretty specifically for our investors. Alternatively, you can find me on, all the social media. So it's just my first name, last name, Veena Jetti, or Enzo Multifamily on, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all the things the cool kids have these days.
Awesome. Thanks again for stopping by and speaking.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun.
Have you ever thought about starting your own podcast? When I was trying to get this podcast off the ground, I had a lot of questions. How do I record an episode? How do I get my show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all the other places people like to listen? How do I make money from my podcast? The answer to every one of these questions is really simple. Anchor. Anchor is a one-stop shop for recording, hosting, and distributing your podcast. Best of all, it's 100% free and ridiculously easy to use. And now, Anchor can match you with great sponsors too, so you can get paid to podcast. Without Anchor, I don't think I would have ever started a podcast. It's so easy to use, and I record most of my episodes from my phone. So if you always wanted to start a podcast, make money doing it, go to anchor.fm/start to join me and the diverse community of podcasters already using Anchor. That's anchor.fm/start. I can't wait to hear your podcast.
This podcast has been brought to you by Nova Zora Digital. Find out how Nova Zora Digital can help your company grow online. Learn more at novazoradigital.com. Until next time, all you digital savages.